Okay, how's everybody doing? So before I dive into the build of the diner, I just want to preface with a little bit of commentary and a few examples of what I would call footprint composition. Not so much vertical composition as you would see in the trees there and how they're arranged to achieve balance, or a building that's offset to the left, or a negative space to the right, etc., etc. I want to talk more about looking down at the footprint of the layout, which I'll jump to another view in just a minute here. And the reason why I want to do this is because a lot of these fundamentals that I'm trying to describe and point out apply to an actual building as well when you design it and revise it in a freelance way. Like if you see a building that you want to, that you really like, you just love the building, right? Well, it might not fit on the footprint of your choice. Probably more so if it's a smaller shelf layout, which you want to try to maximize the visual impact. And there's one other thing I'd like to mention as well, and that's when we vignette a scene. Like in reality, we do that naturally. Like when a human being walks up to a scene, we sort of see a broad view of it, and then we sort of focus in. And I think layouts are like that too, or dioramas, where you sort of see it from a distance, and then when you get up close, you kind of vignette scenes. Like you actually, the human sentient has this incredible ability to vignette things, to cancel out the outer perimeter of things. And I'll just show you a quick example of that. You see, so we create our own sort of dynamic aperture and vignette a scene, and then we can quickly expand and everything's in focus again. And I think that when we're building a static world that has animation, which is actually a bonus, right? Like trains, for example, we can create a sense of life, feel, and mood when everything stands still. If we build in balance as opposed to symmetry. Okay? Balance meaning that it's an irregular arrangement of objects or subjects that balance out within the aperture that you would see right now, let's say. Whereas symmetry would be like where you have the same amount of subjects on each side of the frame. So you get this perfection, this organized kind of balance, which is not what art desires or wants, or what a diorama should even incorporate, because it just doesn't sit right to the eye, because we're always viewing the real world from an angle. Okay, like it's always a good rule of thumb to keep track work or roads at a little bit of an angle to the fascia, as you can see here. It's very subtle on this particular part, because you see where the where this little spur turnout is, adds enough of a curve and kind of eliminates the symmetrical parallel lines, right? Like you want to try to avoid perpendicular angles with everything, and most notably buildings as well. Like I'm not talking about a train station that would run obviously parallel to the track in this case, if that's what it was, but I mean maybe non-railroad related buildings that support your theme or your scene or your model railroad world. In that sense, like I have it maybe more severe than it would be the angle of the building there, the diner, as you can see. But that's how when I have that kind of space, I can lay that up, right? Like I can play around with that. I don't want that building perpendicular to the track for many reasons. Like how boring a painting would be if the subject was always square to the canvas, wouldn't it be? I mean, when you're walking around in the real world, you don't walk and stand at the very dead center of a building when you're taking your family to breakfast or going yourself before work or whatever. Like, you don't walk to the middle of the building, line yourself up, and then absorb the view of that building to your memory. You're walking up to it dynamically, and you're always seeing it at an angle, right? That's the kind of uniqueness of the human vision and memory, and experience, right? Like the subjects that we're around are always at angles, but there's always a natural balance to it. That's why we, when we walk around, we don't think about it. We take it for granted, right? But that's the beauty of architecture and the dynamic position of the person in the scene. You're never at right angles or perpendicular to it. So it's always a good rule of thumb to think about that when you're designing a model, a building, a backdrop, a building flat perhaps in behind it. You can see, just before I move into the first chapter here of the build, see where the foam ends right there? Some have mentioned, how are you going to solve that? Well, I'm not going to worry about that right now, because what's important to me is establishing like the building structures and the scene, and then I'll just fill that in. I'll solve that issue later to accommodate the buildings, just like it would be in the real world, right? There's a million scenarios where rocks are cut away and buildings are designed and constructed over slopes, etc., etc. So I'm not going to worry about that, because I'm going to make that suit and accommodate the scene, which is more important right now. So just as you're building a building, or kit bashing, building a kit, scratch building, whatever, try to think about that. Try to offset like the face of the building from the actual, not necessarily the track always, but the fascia. Okay, the edge of the layout, because the edge of the layout is the large perpendicular line that oftentimes we allow to dictate the composition of the footprint, which I think it's not a good thing to do. I talked about that in Glover Road when I offset the road by about 6 degrees, and the difference that it made even in a small space. Okay.
Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of your ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Okay, so this is time for just a quick little summary of the situation here. So you can see that I've put trim around here. In this case, this is 40 thou by 60 thou, number 143, just to add a curb to the sidewalk. So I can round that off there. It just cleans up the corners nice, and establishes the base, for the model. And it's going to be important that when I lay up walls and stuff, that they're nice and square to keep this, because you don't want this to deflect, right? Evergreen plastic is great to work with, but you got to be careful it doesn't run out on you. So, because I want this to sit flat down on the surface, so I got to watch for that. Now, what I do is, I should just mention this quick, is just roughly sand the surface of all evergreen sheet with some 120 or 240 or whatever, just so that it takes pencil marks nice. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draft this parts of this drawing and onto this, right? Like here, I'll just give you an example. Now, there are many ways to do this because it's a builder's model. It's a scratch build, so the builder can do it any way they want. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draft this strip here that I drew in. See that? That's the curved pony wall that runs along. Here, I'll just show you the artist rendering, which really has little to do with this particular build other than just some inspiration. But this bottom pony wall here that I'm modeling curves, right? So I'm going to have to reproduce it on the top, build a sort of reverse, like almost two of these with a slot in. So when I slide the clear acetate in, it'll curve nice and be held more firmly as a structure. And then I'm going to have a pole on the corner here, obviously to support the roof. Okay, because this would never pass building standards, but then again, it's an artist rendering. It's what Edward Hopper felt at the time when he drew this particular diner, which probably doesn't look at all like the original that inspired him, but he was inspired by the big windows, the big plate glass windows in New York and what was going on inside kind of thing. So that's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build with strip here. In this case, I'm going to use 60 by 80, number 154. I'm going to draft this line onto here. And then I'm going to run this strip, I'm going to glue it down so it'll be a nice guide for when I lay in, my panels, my panel sheet that runs all the way along, which I'll show, all right, as we move forward. Okay, so there's my line for this strip that I indicated here, see? You don't have to draw all the details of the model that you're going to build if it's just a builder's draft like this. Like this is an official drawing. This is all I need really to, I've gone further than I normally do here because this is a smaller, more intricate model and there are things that I want to work out first on paper and then I'll revise as I build even then, right? Okay, so it's an important step from concept to drawing to model, right? So I'll just mention here too, like these are indicators of stools, right? With the checkerboard floor idea. These stools might be just a little bit smaller, but I'm not worried about that in the drawing per se, because I'll just revisit that. Okay, so you can see I'm just tagging the base of this pony wall, which will be a guide to build up my small pony wall, because I want to build a slot. Okay, I'm going to build a slot in this so I can drop the glazing or the glass down into, and the top of the roof so I can take the roof off. The glass will sit inside the pony wall, which is this base wall right here, right? So this glass, you can see in this painting, and once again I have to reverse engineer the artist's mind here, right? Because he took architecture and just painted what he felt, See, that's the difference, right? So if you're going to build a model, like I know people have built models of this before, try to, fundamentally reproduce it exact, but that's not what Edward Hopper, the artist, saw. The building probably didn't look quite like this. He just, took this, the emotion of this scene as he was out for a walk, saw this, and this is how he felt about it. So I like this. There's a ledge inside here that'll give me enough room to build a thicker wall, which I think is important with a low pony wall like this, just to give it some solid kind of balance here in terms of depth, which you won't see up here, but you will here. So that's why I'm building this up. So this curved, I'm going to curve 15 thou clear evergreen plastic in here. Okay, so that's, like here, I'll just show you the elevation. Like this is the front of the diner. So this, what you see right here, is this here. Okay. And obviously I revised this more. This is a little bit larger here. I want this more open so I can see in better. And then you can see this pony wall is like I drafted this pony wall away from this drawing because it would block all the stool detail here. But this pony wall lifts up into place. I want to make sure that it doesn't exceed the height of these stools. I've seen models of this before and the wall's up here somewhere. Like I want the viewer from ground level to be able to see the counter and possibly the stools. Okay, so you can see that in the artist rendering here, right? But now this is a different angle, obviously, but look how much you can see. I mean, can you imagine what this painting would look like if the wall was up to here? Like here, I'll show you. Like what would that be? That wouldn't be, right? But notice how Edward Hopper, he made sure you could see. That's artistic license, see? Even though that wall may not have been that high. So that's how I think as well when I build a model for a scene. I want, especially with an interior, okay? Okay, so I just want to point this out for running a strip like this and getting it nice and laser straight. How I do it, like you can see here, this piece that I'm laying in runs all the way down the front of the building. You want to keep that nice and straight. But you can see there's a door here. So I'm not going to glue this section where the doors and goes. I'm going to cut that out, right? Because it'll be the door opening, or sorry, right here, the door opening will be level with, or no, sorry, the door's right here. So I'll just nibble that out, but I'm just going to lay the whole strip in now. So you can see this is glued now, and this curvature's in there, and it's all loose, see? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tag the end down. I'm going to pull it tight. Okay. I'm just going to lay it on that line. Pull on it. Press down and just tag it. Okay. And then I'm going to come in, once that's set, I'll just run the straight edge up against it and glue it, just wick in cement in behind here, just to get that nice and straight so that when you look down, if you look down, it's not like the pony wall, it's not going to be going like this, right? Okay, so before I move on to building up the pony wall, I want to mention this about the floor. Like, I want to have a checkerboard floor here like I have in my draft here. Okay, and I want to run the checkerboard on an angle. I don't want to run it square to the building footprint. So I want to run on an angle. I just find that looks neater or more cool, kind of angled. And so I can mask this off and just cut with a knife. With Tamiya tape, all the squares. I've done that before. That's a little bit of work. It doesn't look too bad if it's a small space. But I'm going to use this here. The evergreen makes this tile, 4503 tile, 1/8 squares. And I'm just going to cut it like that. And it's going to go in. I'll just add another piece here. And I'll build my rear walls and inner walls on top of this. And then the tile's already done. And I can mask this over and then just knife through these lines underneath here and just pick out all the ones that I want and then just spray it. Or just put a wash on it and leave it white. It's up to the individual, but that's what I'm going to do there. And then I'll just build the inside of the walls over top so it's nice and clean. Okay? Okay, I'll just show you this. I wasn't going to bother, but so this, I have this space left over here. So I didn't want to use up a sheet because when you cut it on an angle like this, it's not an efficient way to use this. And I'll tell you right now that this stuff's not cheap, right? It's 10 bucks a sheet. Okay, so I'm in the business of saving money here in my retirement as well. So what I'm going to do is, rather than sacrifice, you know, another 50% more than I need to run this span, I'm just going to take this piece. I ran a strip down here. This is in the kitchen anyway, bathroom, kitchen kind of thing. And I ran a strip down, and it's Art Deco anyway, so I'm just going to lay that in there, and it covers it. And I saved quite a bit. So, and there'll be walls up here and counter. You won't see it anyway, except in the back door through here where the loading is. If I open those doors up, it'll look fine, right? So, okay. Okay, so I'm still working on the floor plan here. So we have this strip laid down for the outer pony wall of the building, right? Which I'm going to use this 20 thou wainscoting or siding. I'll show you that in a second. And it's going to be similar with the bar, the little pony wall under the bar. Okay. And the face of the bar underneath the counter in this area and the outside are going to mirror each other. So they're going to be made out of this 2050 V-groove. Okay. This 50 thou spacing, 20 thou thick. So I cut these strips here at 12 mil high because that's the height. It's about just 3 feet or so roughly. And this is much thinner so I can curve it, right? So it'll be easier to curve around here to build this pony wall up, okay? Because remember how I mentioned before, I want to build a bit of a cavity to slide the 15 thou acetate clear window in. And I want to put in as large a window as I can all the way down inside of here because it'll make the window more rigid, okay? And create a nicer curve without deflection, okay? Now the inside of the bar is going to be the same, but a little bit higher, obviously. The outside will be a little bit shorter. So I want to make a curve here, like on the corner, okay? See that? So I just cut that opening from the square, just around the square. So I'm just going to slip in this 1/4 inch tube right here, which is also 12 millimeter high, okay? So I'll glue that in place. And then what I'll do is I'll run this like this and wrap it around that pole. So it'll make a nice curve, okay? Which is a smaller diameter than this, clearly, but all right. So that's a trick that you can use tubing to make corners like that if you're going to sheet them. Is just use tubing, okay? Okay, so I just want to show you a quick little tip for lamination, or a procedure that I find helps quite a bit. So now this is 20 thou, and so is this, right? Like the wainscoting siding here is 20 thou. Now I could have used 40 thou, but trying to bend 40 thou around a corner like that gets to be a bit tricky. I mean, you can do it, but the problem is like you get deflection. The top pulls in tighter usually. That ends up being a problem. If you use thinner material, you end up with a more square wall. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's just more square. When you use thicker, it tends to want to pull in on the top like that. So if you want a nice square, stiff pony wall in this case, then I like to laminate, because I want this pony wall here to be stiff, really solid and stiff. So when I slide the 15 thou glazing, it'll hold it nice. You know, it'll just have a nice upright, straight, vertical, nice curve here on the glass, so you don't get any obscure kind of, reflections when you light it up and so on. That's really important. Like I've noticed that in the past building models, if you don't get the glazing square, it can do funny things. So anyway, it's important that way anyway. And then when I line the inside here, if I need to pack it out a little bit more, which would be about 20 thou, I can add a strip of 5 thou on the inside if I want it to be a really nice snug fit. Because when I paint this, I don't want to, I'm not going to mask the glazing. The glazing is just going to drop in, right? Just like the real world kind of thing. And so that all the edges are nice and crisp and clear, okay? So you can do that by laminating. I just take, the glue like this. I just put a bead in, just work it along, okay? Just like this. And then when it's dry, okay, I can just sand the top. And I'll show you how I'll build out sort of a bullnose on the outside, so a nice trim to dress the outside here as well. Okay? Okay, so I've been using this 2050 V-groove, right, spacing, siding. As you know, it's 20 thou, quite flexible. So I've skinned basically this outer pony wall with just plain. So that's all really strong now. Okay, which helps if you're working on the inside of this and you're leaning on it. All right, so I'll return to this a little bit later. So now I've skinned the outside of this countertop or bar, if you will. Okay, so this is another wall being built up. I'm going to lay the counter on top of this. I'll cut that out a sheet, probably one piece. And then what I'm going to do is just skin the inside as well. I packed out the inside here with some square stock. In this case, I had some of this 186, 125 thou by 125. And just makes it nice and strong. I'm going to have some LED lights, so, you don't want to just have thin material like this standing alone, because it can probably get soft on you, like depending on your lighting. But LED lights do get hot. They are lower energy, but they get hot, so or create heat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push that in, see? And while I'm at it, just let me just use this as an example. I just thought of this. Like when you put a backdrop on your layouts, like just pretend this is masonite and this is your shelf layout. This is all you do is you just take an 8-foot piece strip and you just push it into the corner like that. That's all you do. It's pretty simple, really. So that's all I'm doing with this. And the countertop will extend out over top of the front of this by about, 8 inches or so, and then 8 inches on the inside there. Okay, so it cleans that up nice. Okay, so there's a few revisions I had to do here, which is why it's always a good idea to do a draft to get your ideas on paper. So this is the plan. So things are moving along okay here. with the customer area and the floor and the countertop, which I'm going to cut soon to mount on there, and the pony wall. Then we get over to where the sort of kitchen section is. I have to make a few revisions. Like I'm going to change the washroom. This is going to be on an angle, this wall here, because I don't need all that room for a washroom. And the reason why is this bench has to go because the counter comes, oh, here, I'll show you this wall sits here. So I added this door because I forgot, like you need one of those, kitchen kind of doors that swings inwards there. Actually, they swing both ways, but, they usually have just a round window in them. So that's going to go like that. So the bench has to go. But if I put it on the model like this, and I merge it into this countertop here like that, well, you can see where I used up that extra piece. It's a triangle. There's I put a piece of solid stock in there because I changed up the tile configuration. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a wall here on an angle. That'll be plenty of room for the washroom. Okay, in here. And the door right in here. And then I can put a little bit of a bench here that I would like. Or even the jukebox can go right here. Okay? Because over here I haven't decided yet where the jukebox was going to go, whether I should put a door there, like an exit. I might have to go with a door there, just because it's a modern reno of an older building, so regulations are different, right? Okay. And so the washroom will still be on this side, and then the freezer, I'll have to figure out, I can just put the freezer over here maybe or something. Anyway, it's fun. It's fun doing all this, right? Because it's being forced into a little bit of a smaller footprint than normal. But it is a diner at the end of the day, and they are rather compressed in the terms of the prototype as well. So, okay. Okay, so I've attached that wall on the back here. Well, this is the rear of the diner, but this is the side rear wall. I haven't decided if I'm going to brick this or not. I might just put a brick sheet over this. Mind you, the brick I have is the really good quality stuff from Wills, and it already has a thickness to it. So in hindsight now, I'm thinking maybe I should have just cut it straight out of that material. But I might use it for this rear wall, all solid brick sheet. Now, you can see there's been some revisions, right? So what I did is I decided to eliminate the rear sidewalk here. Just should mention this now. So I shifted the whole diner. Or actually I didn't shift it because here's the sidewalk here and here, which is cheated, probably a foot or two narrower than what it needs to be or what it should be. But in terms of perspective and everything, it's probably not going to matter. And now I'm in half inches. I'm thinking where I can save half inch, 1 inch, 1.5, like really, when you're talking about compression, depth of a scene. I've talked about this before. I would never have been able to make the barge slip work with the brewery, which is why I eliminated the siding in the brewery. There would have been 2 tracks back there because it was all about inches, but the footprint was already built, meaning the frames, right? And the bench work. So you got to think about that. So wherever you can purchase, increments of depth, do it if you can get away with it. Okay, so this is a form of compression, right? A little bit. Okay, so now I did add, so the diner's actually a little bit longer, see? Because I eliminated this sidewalk back here. It's a back alley. I don't need a sidewalk back here. So I added to the whole kitchen area. Okay, and so what I did was I built this partition wall. So I added on this rear wall, and then I built this partition wall, and it helps to frame up the doors ahead of time. Okay, so I just used, you can use HO scale 2x3 if you want, depending on the style of door, or 15x40 thou. Either one of these works good for door trims, I find, in HO scale. So this is going to drop in here like this. Okay. And this is going to form my kitchen area. And then, of course, the loading doors at the back here. So there'll be sinks in here and etc., dishwasher, whatever. So if it's like this, this goes back here, see? Okay.